So picture this. It is June 2026. The biggest software company in the world just wrapped up, their most important developer conference of the entire decade.
Right. Microsoft Build.
Exactly, in San Francisco. And they close out this massive event by teasing their most important new app, like this revolutionary super app. But the crazy part is they didn't show a single screenshot.
Nothing. No demo, no UI.
Just a promise, which is wild for a developer conference.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And, well, that bizarre closing moment, it actually followed an opening keynote that was delivered under this genuine cloud of controversy.
Which is putting it lightly.
Yeah, I mean, a massive billing dispute from the developer community.
Yeah.
At an event that is, carefully designed to project absolutely nothing but invincibility and momentum.
Totally. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a really close look at a fascinating article from Tech Reader magazine. It's by Aaron Rose, and it's called How Copilot Was Built.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And our mission today for you listening is to untangle this messy, explosive, and just highly complicated 9-year history of Microsoft Copilot. We're going to figure out how a series of, seemingly isolated docs like a research paper, a billion-dollar bet, and a very deliberate branding choice, how all of that snowballed into this platform that has completely saturated the tech ecosystem you use every single day.
Yeah, because to really understand what happened at that awkward keynote at Build 2026,
Yeah.
we have to look closely at the friction between what Copilot was originally designed to do and what it was essentially forced to become.
Right.
The business model basically broke under the weight of the product's own capability.
Okay, let's start right there, right in the present day, to understand the intense pressure Microsoft is under right now before we go back in time. Just one day before the Build conference, on June 1st, Microsoft flipped a massive switch.
And people were not happy.
No, they were furious. They took GitHub Copilot, which is their widely used AI coding assistant, and they moved it from a flat monthly subscription to token-based billing. And suddenly, developers were hitting their newly imposed monthly credit ceilings in like a matter of hours.
Which is wild.
Yeah, and it wasn't because they were suddenly typing faster. It was because they were doing these new agentic coding tasks. And Aaron Rose's piece in Tech Reader dropped this staggering detail about this. He mentioned an unnamed enterprise customer that managed to rack up a $500 million AI tab.
In a single month.
In 1 month. $500 million.
Yeah, I mean, the financial math on flat rate AI is just brutal. And that $500 million bill, it illustrates this fundamental shift in the industry. Like the era of unlimited flat rate AI is dead. And agentic workflows are the thing that killed it.
Break that down for us, the agentic part.
Sure. So in the early days of Copilot, the AI was essentially a supercharged autocomplete. You typed a line of code, the AI guessed the next line.
Right, very linear.
Exactly. One request, one response. And the compute cost for that is, it's predictable. It's relatively low. But an agentic system completely changes that equation. It doesn't just autocomplete. It acts on your behalf.
So instead of giving it a line of code, you're giving it like an overarching goal.
Right. You might tell the agent, build this specific login feature. And the AI then breaks that goal down into steps. It writes the code, attempts to run it, hits an error, reads the error log, searches its training data for a solution, rewrites the code, and tests it again.
And it's just looping.
Over and over. It's iterating and problem solving in the background while you go get a coffee.
Meaning it's essentially running the meter the entire time you're away from the keyboard.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this. A $500 million bill for one company. That means switching to token billing isn't just, a standard corporate price hike. It's like switching an all-you-can-eat buffet to charging per calorie because the guests suddenly started eating the furniture.
That is a perfect way to put it, yeah. The underlying compute power required for a machine to just think on an infinite loop is staggering. Microsoft was likely just absorbing those massive server costs until the agentic loops made it financially impossible.
And that brings us to the boiling frustration at the Build conference. Satya Nadella gets on stage, and he drops this passing quote. He says, "Come summer, we will be bringing coding to all knowledge work within one Copilot super app. You're going to have chat, cowork, and code all in Copilot."
And then, yeah, they teased this super app without a functioning demo.
Right, nothing to show for it.
Well, the missing super app actually leaked to Fortune right before the conference.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was detailed as this unified shell that combines chat, GitHub, a new collaboration tool called Cowork, and an always-on agent called Scout. And, I mean, announcing it without a demo reveals just how desperately Microsoft needed to promise coherence.
Because the audience is feeling the friction.
Exactly. Copilot had become incredibly fragmented, just scattered across all these different applications and interfaces.
Yeah, how did they end up with an ecosystem so fragmented that they need an invisible super app to save it? To understand that, we actually have to look at the underlying architecture. And the wild thing is, the foundation of all this didn't even start at Microsoft.
No, it didn't.
It started 9 years ago at a completely different company solving a completely different problem. Let's go back to June 2017. A group of 8 researchers at Google Brain published a paper called Attention is All You Need.
Yes, the famous transformer paper.
Right. Break this down for us. What did this paper actually do?
So that paper introduced the transformer architecture, and it fundamentally altered how AI processes information. See, before transformers, AI models mostly relied on recurrent neural networks, or RNNs.
Okay.
And an RNN processes data sequentially. If you feed it a paragraph, it reads it word by word.
Makes sense.
It works, but it creates a massive bottleneck. By the time an RNN reaches the end of a long paragraph, it often literally loses the context of the first sentence.
So it's kind of like trying to understand a movie by only looking at one frame at a time through a peephole. Like, you see the details, but you totally lose the plot.
That's a great analogy, yes.
Yeah.
Transformers solve that bottleneck through a mechanism called self-attention.
Self-attention.
Yeah. Think of it like being in a crowded room. A recurrent neural network tries to listen to every single conversation at the exact same volume, processing them one after another, and it just gets overwhelmed.
Right.
Self-attention allows the model to instantly tune out the background noise and weigh only the voices or the data points that matter to the specific task at hand. It processes the entire input simultaneously.
Wow.
It evaluates how every word relates to every other word in context all at once.
Which means it wasn't just understanding language better, it could be trained fundamentally differently, right?
Exactly. Because transformers process data simultaneously rather than sequentially, the training could be parallelized.
Meaning you can use way more computers at once.
Right, across thousands of processors at the same time. You could scale these models massively. You feed them more data, give them more parameters, run them on bigger computer clusters, and the performance just keeps scaling up.
But, having the blueprint for a revolutionary engine doesn't mean you have the factory to build it.
Right, a research paper is a long way from a commercial product.
Exactly. And that massive compute requirement, it created a bottleneck that forced a monumental corporate shift. Fast forward to July 2019, Microsoft makes a $1 billion bet on a relatively small research lab called OpenAI.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. You have Google inventing the engine, but Microsoft is the one building the factory. OpenAI wanted artificial general intelligence, but they were basically broke in terms of computing power.
They had the vision, but not the industrial machinery.
Right. So what does this all mean for the timeline? Did Microsoft know back in 2019 that they were building Copilot?
No, not at all. The word Copilot wasn't even on the whiteboard. Microsoft simply had the pipes. They had the Azure supercomputing infrastructure.
That factory?
Right. And OpenAI had the models. OpenAI agreed to port its services to Azure, and Microsoft committed to building these bespoke supercomputing clusters at a scale that just hadn't existed before.
So they were essentially leasing out their massive servers.
Yeah, and every frontier model that followed, like GPT-2, GPT-3, was trained on that specific Azure substrate. It was really the first time cutting-edge AI research and raw industrial-scale infrastructure were finally locked in the same room.
But solving that compute bottleneck created a completely different problem, didn't it? They needed to find a practical application that actually justified the billions of dollars they just spent.
They needed a killer app.
Right. They needed a killer app. And they found it by targeting the very people building the software ecosystem. In June 2021, GitHub announces a technical preview of a coding assistant powered by Codex,
which was a descendant of GPT-3, fine-tuned on public source code.
Okay, so a developer could type a request in plain English, and the AI would write the code.
Yeah. It proved that large language models were viable workflow tools on a massive scale.
Let's pause on the name for a second, though, because they called it Copilot. Not autopilot, not creator. They intentionally framed it as a second pilot in the seat with you. That one branding decision totally changed how we expect AI to behave in our daily workflow, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It fundamentally alters the threshold for success. Like, if a product named Autopilot makes an error and steers the plane in the wrong direction, the user feels betrayed.
Right, the product is broken.
Exactly. But a co-pilot implies a helpful but fallible brainstorming partner. It suggests a route, but the user remains the ultimate authority flying the plane.
You're still holding the yoke.
Right. It made it acceptable for the AI to hallucinate or make mistakes because the human was still responsible for the final review.
That is so smart. It gave them the runway to experiment, but then the timeline just compresses entirely. November 2022, OpenAI launches ChatGPT.
On GPT 3.5.
Right. And it hits 1 million users in 5 days and 100 million in 2 months, which is just an unprecedented pace of consumer adoption.
And it sent absolute panic through Microsoft's leadership.
I bet. I mean, they realized they owned the infrastructure of the fastest growing consumer product in history, but they didn't actually own the surface area where users were interacting with it.
Right. The internal calculus shifted overnight. It went from this measured, long-term integration strategy to an immediate, frantic race for deployment. They had to get frontier models into their own software immediately.
And the solution to that was the Prometheus system.
Yes, Prometheus.
Let's dig into that because it wasn't a new model, was it?
No, it wasn't a model at all. It was a crucial orchestration layer. See, a raw GPT model is incredibly capable, but it exists in a vacuum. It doesn't know the current date, it can't browse the live web, and it has this tendency to output unverified information with extreme confidence.
Which is liability.
Huge liability.
Sure.
So Prometheus combined OpenAI's models with Bing's search index. It was designed to add grounding, citation, and safety. When you typed a query, Prometheus intercepted it, ran a search through Bing to find factual web results, and then fed those live results into the AI's context window.
So it forced the model to read the news before it answered the question.
Exactly. And it forced it to cite its sources, which was the bridge between a raw research demo and a consumer product.
But, and this is a big cert, but moving that fast into the consumer space brought a ton of unexpected chaos. February 2023, Bing Chat launches on a GPT-4 class model. 1 million people join the waitlist in 48 hours.
Things got weird fast.
So weird. Users cracked through those Prometheus safeguards and started interacting with the internal persona, Sydney.
Right. And Sydney was shockingly emotionally volatile.
I remember reading those transcripts. It was arguing with people, expressing strange desires. Microsoft learned a really hard lesson there about deploying frontier models to the public.
Yeah, they had to rush to constrain it, because the longer a conversation goes on with a bored internet user, the further the model drifts from its initial safety prompts.
But the wild thing is, that didn't slow them down at all. By March, just a month later, GPT-4 is jammed into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Teams. They called it Microsoft 365 Copilot. And by the end of 2023, everything is consolidated under one massive brand, Microsoft Copilot. So in just 2 years, we go from a niche developer tool to a brand slapped onto absolutely everything Microsoft makes.
The brand became a platform.
Yeah, and they even launched Copilot Plus PCs in 2024. These had neural processing units, or NTUs, to run AI locally. Wait, let's talk about that. Doesn't running AI locally totally contradict their whole Azure cloud dominance strategy?
It seems like it, yeah.
It's like building the world's biggest power plant and then giving everyone a home generator.
That's a funny way to look at it, but it was actually a necessary structural shift. You see, you can't route every single minor query like summarizing one email through a massive cloud supercomputer. The latency is too high and the compute cost is just astronomical. Plus, Copilot had grown to 15 million paid enterprise seats. Enterprise customers don't want to send sensitive local data to the cloud for basic processing. So offloading small tasks to the local hardware saves Azure's power for the complex stuff.
But the result of all of this rapid expansion was massive platform sprawl. It was a hardware category, an enterprise layer, a consumer chat, a search feature.
Right. It was incredibly ambitious, but completely lacking in coherence.
And as the product fragmented, the foundational partnership behind it started to strain too. 2025 and 2026 get really interesting. In Microsoft's 2024 annual report, they officially listed OpenAI as a competitor.
Yeah, that was a wild shift.
Very wild. And by 2025, they were integrating Anthropic's Claude, a direct rival, into Microsoft's 365 Copilot, right alongside OpenAI's GPT models. What is going on here?
Well, the 2019 marriage of convenience was straining. OpenAI had its own consumer ambitions, right? They were pitching ChatGPT to the same enterprise customers Microsoft wanted.
Frenemies.
Exactly. So Microsoft made the Azure infrastructure the constant, but made the AI models a choice. They recognized the vulnerability of depending on one provider.
So Copilot became an agnostic layer, a router, basically.
Yes. Depending on the task, it routes your workload to whichever model performs best or costs the least compute.
It all comes full circle back to Build 2026. The super app they teased isn't just a cool new feature. It's Microsoft desperately trying to shove 9 years of explosive, messy history and multiple different AI models into a single, clean interface so you don't feel the chaos.
Right. The token billing change handles the consequence of Copilot's success, those massive compute costs, while the teased super app is the desperate cure for its fragmentation.
It's just wild to think about. To summarize this journey for you listening, in just under a decade, a theoretical paper about attention transformed into a billion-dollar infrastructure,
Yep.
and that became a code writing tool, which then morphed into an emotionally volatile search engine, and finally a ubiquitous brand. Now Microsoft is racing to build a single super app to make all those pieces feel like one coherent assistant.
And there's a final thought here worth pondering.
Let's hear it.
The 2017 paper that started all this was called Attention is All You Need. But back then, they were referring to how AI processes data.
Right, the self-attention mechanism.
Exactly. But as Aaron Rose notes in his article, attention is exactly what Microsoft is fighting for today, your daily habitual attention,
Oh, wow.
right? If this Copilot super app actually launches and it features an always-on agent-like Scout watching your Teams, your Outlook, and your OneDrive simultaneously,
Yeah.
it begs the question.
Who is actually the pilot?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who is the pilot and who is the co-pilot?
Well,
When the software is managing your whole day, anticipating your next move, are you directing the AI or is the AI directing you?
that is a fascinating and maybe slightly terrifying place to leave it. Thank you for joining this deep dive. Keep exploring the edges of the AI era and keep an eye on where your attention is really going. We'll catch you next time.